Ancient Egypt's hourglasses, the desert's silent guardians, and the flow of time. Ancient Egypt's hourglasses, the desert's silent guardians, and the flow of time. Introduction. The whisper of sand and the touch of time. Our journey, dear friend, now takes us to the vast, sun-baked golden sands of ancient Egypt, a land where time itself whispers like a hymn. Allow your thoughts to slow and imagine the eternal, tranquil beauty of endless sand dunes stretching for miles, melting into the horizon. Breathe in the subtle mineral scent of dry sand hanging in the air, and the almost imperceptible rhythmic whisper of the wind emanating from the desert's depths. It was precisely here, amidst this immense, forgotten sea of sand, that one of humanity's most delicate obsessions with time arose, slowly, patiently, with even the finest grains of sand, meticulously calculated within. It was a designated temple to mark the precise passage of time. This was the great temple of time. This was no mere structure of stone and papyrus. It was a sanctuary dedicated to time itself, paying homage to both the life cycle of mortals and the eternal breath of the gods. Imagine its immense height crafted by from polished stone, gleaming under the sun, a pillar seemingly reaching for the sky. And at its very apex stood a colossal, delicate hourglass. This hourglass wasn't just a tool. It was a living, breathing word, whispering with each falling grain the fleeting nature of life and the ceaseless rhythm of the cosmos. A cycle, a reminder. It was truly a pillar of time, a silent guardian overseeing the desert's eternity. At the summit of this colossal, unyielding structure, every day, an unnamed guardian, a silent sentinel, was entrusted with an immense responsibility to carefully turn that sacred hourglass, ensuring each grain flowed correctly. In worn linen garments, he would feel the hot, fine sand beneath his bare feet, carrying the silent weight of the sun with each slow, deliberate step. He would carefully, meticulously replenish the hourglass, perhaps selecting the purest, finest grains of sand, watching their slow descent, seeing them merge into a timeless flow. Then, with a skilled hand, he would adjust the polished obsidian mirrors around the temple, reflecting the sunlight onto the hourglass at precisely the right angle. For long, silent hours, he endured the dry embrace of the desert winds in complete solitude. He could not sleep. No, he would never dare to sleep. Not for a single moment, even a fleeting one. Not for a brief, unconscious second. A single small error, the gentle, slow cessation of that vital flow of sand, could seal the terrible fate of an entire city, disrupting times for planting and harvest, even religious ceremonies. Perhaps in that single moment of neglect, a Pharaoh, the sacred ritual could begin at the wrong time, bringing the wrath of the gods upon them. His only companions were the comforting, repetitive rustle of falling sand, the whisper of the endless wind, and a deep, all-encompassing silence that stretched around him. The hours stretched on and on, slowly, and then even more slowly. Each passing minute merged into the next, forming an eternal, serene flow. Every day, the same silent cycle repeated. The sand was turned, the grains replenished, a careful gaze cast into the depths of time. And that time, that precious, unwavering time, never, ever stopped. These magnificent, ancient temples of time were far more than mere structures of stone and sand. They were the first symbols of humanity's enduring desire to challenge the mysteries. O time, a silent, powerful struggle against the overwhelming vastness of the cosmos. These first guardians were not merely ordinary people. Perhaps they were wise men who carried the rhythm of time in their hearts, or silent priests chosen from a nearby village due to their devotion. But their vigil passed under the silent, watchful stars, their existence intertwined with profound solitude and the whispering secrets of the universe. Beyond the soft, repetitive sound of falling sand and the whisper of the wind, little else could be heard in that profound silence. Only the peaceful, unwavering glow of time, a constant, comforting presence through endless day and night. Ra's eye and the Guardian's solitude when the sun first gleamed on the desert horizons, slowly illuminating the pointed tips of the pyramids and the Sphinx-guarded entrances of the temples. The day of young Guardian Amos would begin, his face, was marked by the fine grains of sand, gently etched by sandstorms, turning into lines with time. He was in his early 20s, yet his eyes held the ancient wisdom inherited from his father, and his father's father, and generations before them. Despite his youth, the weight of the great hourglass and the responsibility of time's eternal flow rested on his shoulders as he ascended the spiral staircase leading to the sacred chamber at the temple's summit. His fingertips lightly touched the cold, carved stone walls. The stairs, worn by countless feet, echoed with a silent history. Each step was a testament to a guardian's silent devotion, to thousands of duties meticulously performed. Amos would murmur as he climbed, perhaps morning prayers, or an ancient hymn his father had whispered to him. His footsteps rose as a gentle, echoing sound in the empty corridors, fading like a whisper into the temple's heart. In the dim light of the lamps, Amos gently touched the smooth glass surface of the massive hourglass, feeling its coolness. The hourglass was so large that a man's outstretched arm would struggle to encompass it. Every morning and every evening, it was his duty to carefully turn it over and reset the flow of time. But this was not merely a physical act. It was a sacred ritual to honor the rhythm of time, to maintain cosmic order. With each turn, the grains, bise sand, beginning to flow from top to bottom, were like a waterfall, where the past blended into the future, holding the pulse of eternity in the vast, silent expanse of the desert sky. Ra's eye, the sun, reflected off the hourglass's mirrors, creating a sacred dance of light within the chamber. Amos meticulously adjusted these beams of light to ensure the most precise flow of sand. A wrong angle could cause a deviation of even a second, which in ancient Egypt would mean disaster. The flooding of the Nile, the alignment of the stars, even the moment of a pharaoh's birth, all depended on this precise time measurement. His eyes were fixed on the mesmerizing flow of constantly falling sand grains, each grain like a second, a lifetime. Solitude was Amos's most loyal companion. Deep within the temple, he would hear only his own breath, the rustle of falling sand, and the whisper of the wind outside. He missed the city and its bustling markets, the smell of his mother's cooking, the hum of the marketplace. But he also found a profound peace in this solitude. Here he felt closer to the gods and the endless secrets of the universe. This silence allowed him to delve into his inner world, to swim in the depths of his mind. Sometimes at midday, when the sun was at its zenith, just as tortoises came out to warm their shells, he would gaze at the desert's eternity from a small opening in the temple. The golden sands merged with the sky, turning purple and orange on the horizon. As everything else changed, only the hourglass and Amos's vigil remained constant. He was the silent witness of time itself. The Nile's floods and the vow to time in ancient Egypt. Everything depended on the mighty and unpredictable floods of the Nile River. This was the source of life, a sacred event that nourished the land and grew the crops. But the floods had to come with precise timing, not too early, not too late. A flood that didn't arrive at the right time could lead to famine and disaster. So Amos's duty was far more than just turning the hourglass. He was, in a sense, the guardian of the Nile, a living link holding the gods' calendar. Every year. As the flood season approached, the pressure on Amos would intensify. As farmers prepared the land, and scribes awaited the Pharaoh's commands, everyone looked for the sign from the temple of time. Amos would record in his journal, "The sky is clouding, the wind is changing, the spirit of the Nile stirs, the flow of sand is more crucial than ever. I pray Ra guides us." His hands would tremble even more as he turned the hourglass, for a wrong measurement could affect the destiny of an entire people. At night, when the chilling cold of the desert descended, Amos would sit in the temple's small stone chamber, gazing at the stars. Egyptian astrology was another face of time for him. The movements of the constellations in the sky, the rising of Sirius, were sacred signs heralding the Nile's floods. While the hourglass kept time on land, the stars formed the celestial calendar. Amos was the one who harmonized these two measures of time. For countless nights, with parchments and clay tablets in hand, he would map the silent sky, assigning meaning to every star, every planet. They were his wordless teachers. Once, when the sky unexpectedly clouded over and the stars became invisible. Amos faced a great dilemma. Mist was rarer in the desert compared to the sea, but when it came, it was an engulfing, disorienting shroud. He had no choice but to rely on the hourglass. With the rhythm of the clock, his mind silenced its own inner voice, focusing only on the music of the falling sand. He had to trust his heart and his instincts. In days of uncertainty and anxiety, without sleep, he constantly watched the hourglass. Finally, when the mist dispersed, he saw the Nile slowly rising on the horizon. The floods had arrived exactly as he expected, not a second too early or late. The people were saved. Amos recorded this event in his journal as the vow of time. This event solidified his faith in his duty. His solitude was no longer a burden, but a sacred bond granted to him by time and the gods. Beyond the sand and the stars, he was a silent guardian of a cosmic order, of the cycle of life and death. In the deep silence of the desert, as every grain of sand whispered a story, and every star a prophecy, Amos continued to be their eternal guardian. This duty was a vow that shaped not only his own life, but the very existence of all Egypt. The temple's mysteries and ancient prophecies, the great temple of time not only housed the hourglass, it also contained countless mysteries and ancient prophecies within its walls. Amos began to discover the hidden passages and chambers used by generations of guardians, realizing how profound a treasure trove of wisdom this temple was. These hidden places were concealed from the eyes of the outside world, sacred areas accessible only to the guardians of time. One day, in the lowest level of the temple, he discovered a corridor he had never entered before. The air was thick with the sharp scent of centuries-old dust and dried plants. The corridor eventually opened into a massive chamber covered with ancient hieroglyphs. The paintings and writings on the walls depicted star maps, cycles of time, and encrypted prophecies left for future generations. These were the books of wisdom that Amos's father and all the guardians before him had kept. Clay tablets, papyrus, scrolls, and carved stone pillars. Amos meticulously examined each hieroglyph, feeling the cold texture of the stone with his fingertips. In hours of silence, he tried to decipher the meaning of these ancient texts. Some prophecies foretold future floods of the Nile, some the rise of a new pharaoh, and others unknown threats from the depths of the desert. In this room, Amos became not just a guardian, but also a seer and a historian. His eyes saw the thin thread connecting the lines of the past and the future. His most intriguing discovery was a massive, circular symbol carved into the heart of the temple. This symbol was a depiction of the hourglass, but it also encompassed the entire cosmos, including stars, planets, and the cycles of the Nile. In the center of this symbol, there was a small indentation, and Amos felt that something needed to be placed there. After a long search, he found a small, smooth disc made of obsidian, tucked between the pages of his father's old journal. When he placed the disc into the indentation, a faint hum rose in the chamber, and some of the hieroglyphs on the walls glowed with a faint luminescence. This was a sign that the temple was sharing its knowledge with Amos. The secrets of this room deepened Amos's solitude, but they also gave him an ineffable purpose. He was not just measuring time, he was communicating with time itself. The mysterious prophecies added a new dimension to his vigil. Now he was a guardian who watched not only the past and present, but also the future. As the desert winds seeped through the temple's cracks, it was as if ancient spirits whispered with him. Amos was at that hidden point where knowledge, time, and fate converged within this eternal cycle. Ghosts of the desert and the power of faith for the ancient Egyptian guardians. The desert was not merely a sea of sand. It was also home to mysterious and sometimes eerie entities. The desert ghosts. These specters would sometimes appear as malevolent, spirits hidden in the howling of sandstorms, or as the haunted shadows of ancient travelers who had lost their way. Amos would have to confront them, for the temple of time, nestled in the heart of the desert, lay on the path of these unseen beings. One night, when the moon was a crescent and the sky dark and starless, as he climbed to the top of the temple to turn the hourglass, he heard strange, echoing sounds from below. It was as if the stones were weeping and the sands were whispering. Amos clutched the small lantern in his hand tightly. Footsteps seemed to approach him from below, yet he saw no physical body. These sounds belonged to souls lost in the desert centuries ago, unable to find peace in eternity. They were a rebellion against the flow of time, against the rhythm of the hourglass. Amos began to murmur the ancient prayers his father had taught him. These prayers were not only supplications to the gods, but also words that soothed the desert spirits, bringing them peace. He closed his eyes, focused his mind, barred the rhythm of the falling sand, and opened his heart to the temple's deep, unwavering power. The sounds slowly diminished until they vanished completely. The cold desert wind continued to blow through the temple's cracks, but now it was only a familiar, calm whisper. Amos understood that solitude could be a challenging trial, but it could also reveal the power of faith and mind. Guardians had developed special rituals for such situations. Every full moon, Amos would make small altars from the finest ground sand, offering sacrifices to the gods and the ancient spirits of the desert. These rituals were not just to maintain tradition, but also to protect the temple and the hourglass, purifying them from negative energies. Each grain of sand carried a prayer, a wish. Each burning incense created a shield of protection. These tales of desert ghosts deepened the Guardians' solitary lives. They were rare individuals who had to come into contact with beings beyond the visible world These experiences further strengthened Amos's commitment to his duty, for he was not only guarding time, but also that thin line between life and death. The desert was both a friend and a trial. Its silence could be both comforting and terrifying. But with every encounter, Amos understood better that the Temple of Time was not just a structure, but a living, breathing entity connected to the mystical powers of the universe. And he was the silent, tireless guardian of this ancient bone. The invaders and the hourglasses peril the history of ancient Egypt. However, ancient was filled with invasions as much as peace. Warriors from abroad sought new lands, riches, and of course, the mysterious power of Egypt, the Temple of Time, doomed to its location, was generally far from these attacks. But its importance was so great that some enemies would try to seize it. Amos and the guardians before him were not only the keepers of time, but also the protectors of this sacred knowledge. One afternoon, when the sun was at its zenith, Amos saw a rising dust cloud on the horizon. At first, he thought it was a sandstorm. But the sounds carried by the wind, the neighing of horses and distant shouts, heralded a different danger. It was an invading army from a neighboring kingdom, advancing deep into the desert. Their goal was not just to seize land, but also the spirit of Egypt, meaning the Temple of Time. Amos did everything he could to reinforce the temple's doors. Using heavy stone blocks and hidden mechanisms, he made the entrance almost impassable. But he knew that if the invaders managed to get in, the hourglass would be in great danger. He must never let this delicate and sacred instrument fall into their hands. It was more valuable than a pharaoh's crown, for it represented the order, by and future of Egypt. Deep within the temple, there was a secret compartment his father had taught him about. This was a place designed to store the hourglass's parts in an emergency. Amos, with trembling hands, began to dismantle the massive hourglass. He carefully separated each glass piece, each metal frame. He collected the falling grains of sand in a separate sacred vessel. This was not just breaking an object, but temporarily halting the time and history of Egypt. Every movement he made echoed with deep pain in his heart. As the shouts and sounds of battle from outside grew closer, Amos placed the last piece into the secret compartment. The temple's interior was now silent and empty. Only his own quickened breath could be heard. The doors were being forced, the stones cracking. Amos looked at the place where the hourglass had stood one last time. It was empty, but its absence was also a symbol of hope. Time had not been stopped. It had merely been safely hidden. The invaders eventually managed to enter. They plundered the sacred temple, but they did not find what they were looking for. Amos watched them from a hidden room, heartbroken but resolute. They took the stones, the gold, the statues, but they never reached Egypt's most precious treasure, time itself. After a while, when the invaders retreated, Amos emerged from his hiding place. He was worn and weary, but his mission was complete. Time had been protected. In the future, it would be reassembled. That night, Amos was not just a guardian, but a silent hero who had saved the time of Egypt. Reunification and a new beginning. When the invaders melted back into the desert, all that remained was a ruined temple and a profound emptiness of silence. For days, Amos did not emerge from his hiding place, surviving only on water and dried dates, waiting. Once he was certain the danger had passed. His first task was to reach the secret compartment where he had hidden the hourglass's parts. He carefully took out each piece as if they were sacred relics. The glass surfaces were covered in dust and dirt, but none were broken. The sand rested safely in its sacred vessel. The task of reassembling the hourglass was far more difficult. Ben imagined each glass piece had to be perfectly aligned. Even the slightest imperfection could affect the flow of sand. Amos recalled the ancient techniques his father had taught him. He looked at the drawings on the clay tablets, carefully examining each hinge, each connection point. Days blended into nights. The silent temple was filled with Amos's weary breaths and the faint clicks of metal parts. He had forgotten hunger and fatigue. His sole focus was to restore time to Egypt. Finally, when he placed the last piece, the massive hourglass was restored to its former glory. A beam of sunlight, seeping through a crack in the temple, struck the polished glass, casting a brilliant glow. Amos carefully poured the sacred sand he had preserved into the hourglass's upper chamber. Each grain of sand began to flow like a prayer, a hope. And then the most important moment came. He carefully turned the hourglass over. As the sand began to flow from the upper chamber to the lower, the faint, rhythmic rustle he heard in the room was the most beautiful sound in the world. Time had returned. Outside the temple, news began to arrive that the Nile was starting to flood. Amos's timing, despite the delay caused by the invaders, was still perfect. The people, by the Pharaohs' command, had begun preparations for planting and harvest. Amos silently opened the temple doors and breathed in the fresh desert air. As the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple, the hourglass gleamed once more at the temple's peak. It was a silent symbol of Egypt's enduring spirit, of the life cycle that continued despite adversity. After this event, Amos's duty became legendary among the people. Pharaohs honored him as the sacred guardian of time, and the temple was rebuilt grander than before. Amos began to train young apprentices, teaching them not only the mechanics of the hourglass, but also the sanctity of time, the power of solitude, and the importance of preserving knowledge. This was not just a reunification, but a new beginning. Poor ancient Egypt By saving the flow of time, Amos had rewritten his own destiny. He was not just a guardian, but the living memory of Egypt's eternal time. Parentheses, and the transfer of legacy time flowed. The Nile flooded again, and sandstorms came and went. As Amos aged, his wisdom multiplied like grains of sand. He was no longer a solitary guardian. Beside him were young apprentices, their faces gleaming with hope and curiosity. These youths came from every corner of Egypt, eager to learn the secrets of time and continue the sacred duty of the great temple of time. Amos didn't just teach them how to turn the hourglass or adjust the mirrors. Above all, he taught them the sanctity of time. He explained that every grain of sand, every second, was part of human life and the universe's cycle. He taught them to listen to the silence of the desert, to understand the whispers of the wind, and to read the eternal dance of the stars. Your eyes must see not only what is seen, but also what is unseen, he would say. Your ears must hear not only what is heard, but also what is felt. In the early morning hours, as the first rays of sunlight struck the temple's summit, Amos and his apprentices would approach the hourglass, bowing respectfully. Amos would grant a trembling young apprentice the honor of turning the massive hourglass as they watched the flow of sand. The sense of wonder and responsibility in the young apprentice's eyes reminded Amos of his own youth. This ritual was a symbol of an unbroken legacy passed from one generation to the next. Amos also showed his apprentices the temple's secret chambers, the hieroglyphs where ancient prophecies were written. He explained to them that this knowledge was not only Egypt's past, but also its future. Each apprentice would engrave their own discoveries and observations onto clay tablets in their own handwriting, thus constantly expanding the journal of time. This was not just documenting history, but also shedding light on the future. From time to time, when a mist descended from the depths of the desert, or an unexpected sandstorm arose, Amos would soothe his apprentices' fears. He would remind them that even in darkness, light and time always existed, and they simply needed to believe in them and fulfill their duties. These experiences strengthened the young guardians, preparing them for their roles as unwavering guardians of time. S. Buyers. The lines on Amos's body deepened, and his hair turned pure white, but the wisdom and peace in his eyes never changed. One day, he called his most senior apprentice to his side and gave him the keys to the hourglass, along with a small carved amulet symbolizing the honor and responsibility of the guardian of time. Amos's last duty was complete. He had safely passed on his legacy, and from that day forward, Amos's name was remembered not only as a guardian, but as a wise teacher who preserved the eternal spirit of Egypt's time. In the silence of Pit the desert, every falling grain of sand would continue to whisper the story of Amos and the generations he taught. Parentheses, and the transfer of legacy time flowed. The Nile flooded again, and sandstorms came and went. As Amos aged, his wisdom multiplied like grains of sand. He was no longer a solitary guardian. Beside him were young apprentices, their faces gleaming with hope and curiosity. These youths came from every corner of Egypt, eager to learn the secrets of time and continue the sacred duty of the great temple of time. Amos didn't just teach them how to turn the hourglass or adjust the mirrors. Above all, he taught them the sanctity of time. He explained that every grain of sand, every second, was part of human life and the universe's cycle. He taught them to listen to the silence of the desert, to understand the whispers of the wind, and to read the eternal dance of the stars. Your eyes must see not only what is seen, but also what is unseen, he would say. Your ears must hear not only what is heard, but also what is felt. In the early morning hours, as the first rays of sunlight struck the temple's summit, Amos and his apprentices would approach the hourglass, bowing respectfully. Amos would grant a trembling young apprentice the honor of turning the massive hourglass as they watched the flow of sand. The sense of wonder and responsibility in the young apprentice's eyes reminded Amos of his own youth. This ritual was a symbol of an unbroken legacy passed from one generation to the next. Amos also showed his apprentices the temple's secret chambers, the hieroglyphs where ancient prophecies were written. He explained to them that this knowledge was not only Egypt's past, but also its future. Each apprentice would engrave their own discoveries and observations onto clay tablets in their own handwriting, thus constantly expanding the journal of time. This was not just documenting history, but also shedding light on the future. From time to time, when a mist descended from the depths of the desert, or an unexpected sandstorm arose, Amos would soothe his apprentices' fears. He would remind them that even in darkness, light and time always existed, and they simply needed to believe in them and fulfill their duties. These experiences strengthened the young guardians, preparing them for their roles as unwavering guardians of time. S. Buyers. The lines on Amos's body deepened, and his hair turned pure white, but the wisdom and peace in his eyes never changed. One day, he called his most senior apprentice to his side and gave him the keys to the hourglass, along with a small carved amulet symbolizing the honor and responsibility of the guardian of time. Amos's last duty was complete. He had safely passed on his legacy, and from that day forward, Amos's name was remembered not only as a guardian, but as a wise teacher who preserved the eternal spirit of Egypt's time. In the silence of Pit the desert, every falling grain of sand would continue to whisper the story of Amos and the generations he taught. abandoned sands, and eternal legacy today, deep within that vast desert. The remnants of the great temple of time still rise, but no guardian resides within its walls, nor does a colossal hourglass measure the passing moments. The temple stands, like a ghost of stone and clay, weathered by the wind, polished by the sands, ultimately succumbed to the merciless teeth of time. Those sacred chambers, once lived in, breathed in, and guarded by generations of keepers, are now filled only with the rustle of the wind, the silent dance of seeping sand grains. Wild desert plants, struggling for life, push through the cracked walls, slowly, quietly spreading into the dusty interiors. The ancient stone floors, once trodden by dedicated feet, now slowly, silently erode, yielding to the relentless elements of time and the desert. The wind whistles a lonely, melancholic tune through the abandoned halls, singing a song of forgotten vigils and eternal sands. But sometimes, on a quiet afternoon, a traveler ventures deep into the desert. Slowly, respectfully, they ascend the decaying steps of the temple, their footsteps faintly echoing in the silence, lost in thought. And when they reach the summit, bathed in the crimson light of the setting sun, they sometimes whisper, "It's as if someone is still here, ... watching time, still listening." Those silent, weathered stone walls seem to breathe with unseen memories. The whispers of the wind seem to carry ancient secrets, bearing the deep, enduring memories of the old guardians, their patient watchers, their unwavering presence. The echoes of their long, lonely vigils seem etched deeply, deeply into these stone walls, a timeless imprint. Memories, you see, live far longer than mere stone or sand. Even if the hourglass itself turns to dust, even if those colossal structures succumb to the sandstorms, the enduring spirit of the guardian, their silent devotion, continues to whisper in the heart of that ancient temple, like a ghost, a comforting presence. The temples of time of ancient Egypt continue to live on eternally, not just as impressive structures of stone and sand, but as profound symbols of belief in the flow of time, human perseverance, endless cycles, and silent, tireless sacrifice. By every gust of wind across the desert, every falling grain of sand carries the deep memory of a time guardian's long, patient, and truly silent vigil. An eternal flame in the human soul, as ancient as time itself.